Yo, what's up Minecraft? Today I'm about to revolutionize the game with this rediscovery and reinventing of an old technology. For years, people have used TNT duping as the solution to explosion-powered farms and land clearing, citing the non-renewability of TNT. And while end crystals are renewable, no sane person wants to spend that much time buying glass off of villagers to craft them renewably. But today, I'm going to showcase to you why Ghast fireballs are a viable alternative to TNT duping. Let's start off with the fireball properties and how we manage them. If you're just interested in the applications of the technology and don't want to hear all the technical specifics, then you can skip ahead in the video. But the three main properties that we need to understand to make viable Ghast Tech are the explosion properties, the 3 hitboxes, and the motion properties. As most players know, Ghast fireballs are a lot weaker than TNT. They can't even blow up stone. In fact, the highest blast resistance block that they can blow up is something with a blast resistance of 4, and even then, only if it blows up inside of the block. But Myren Eario discovered a trick, where when blocks are being pushed by pistons, they have a blast resistance of 0, like slime blocks. And so, as a result, we can make use of this to blow up as much as a 3x3x3 cube of blocks, excluding the center blocks, in order to get 24 items from a single Ghast fireball. Next up is what I like to call the 3 hitboxes. If you summon a fireball and look at it with F3 plus B, you might think that its hitbox is simply a 1 block wide cube, but this is a bit misleading. Arrows have a half block wide hitbox, but they can be shot through gaps of any size as long as there's a clear line of sight through it. As you can see, despite having a half block hitbox, these arrows manage to pass through a 1/16 of a block gap. Fireballs work in the same way, and if you line them up perfectly, they can also go through that gap. This is because for collisions with surfaces, the game only tracks the fireball's coordinates, which are centered on the bottom center of the entity. As a result, it effectively has an infinitely thin hitbox when it comes to collisions with surfaces and can pass through gaps as narrow as 1/16 of a block, or smaller. The visible hitbox does have functionality though. When determining whether a fireball is pushed or colliding with an entity, the visible hitbox is what is used. The last hitbox to understand is the deflecting zone. This is a 3x3x3 cube centered on the center of the fireball, and any player attack that intersects this deflecting zone redirects the fireball in the direction of the attack. And by knowing all of these hitboxes, we can now effectively control where and when the fireball will collide. So now we need to know how to get the fireball to the blocks. In order to do this, we need to know where the fireball is when it spawns, which way it's going, and where it explodes. If the player is straight in front of a ghast, the initial position of the fireball is 2.5 blocks up from its bottom, 4 blocks from the center of the ghast in the direction of the player, and the fireball is then shot towards the center of the player. User JJL21 discovered that through positioning the center of the player at the location where the fireball spawns, you can create stationary fireballs, and this has already been used in numerous contraptions, which I'll link down in the description. But the most important factor in making Ghast Tech work is where the fireball explodes. And surprisingly enough, it doesn't actually explode at the contact point of the surface or entity it collides with, but actually at the point just before it collides. This is important to know because the explosion is centered on the coordinates of the fireball. And so, if the coordinates of the fireball are in the center of the blocks that are being exploded, then all the blocks will be exploded. But otherwise, the blocks will not reliably blow up. As you can see, I have a few command blocks here. The bottom one here uses the data get entity command to just check if there is a fireball. The second command block, a chain command block, checks the position of the fireball. And since it only checks conditionally if there is a fireball, then it gets the last known location of the fireball. As you can see here, the Y coordinate, the decimal location is 0.08. It needs to generally be within 0.02 of the target explosion coordinates, which are the 0.5 mark, directly in the center of all the blocks, in order to work reliably. I used this command block setup in order to find the optimal placement for the Ghast, so that its fireball explodes at the correct point. Now, if you've tried experimenting with Ghasts in earlier versions, you might be wondering about the RNG. You see, in earlier versions, a fireball did not travel in a straight line directly towards the center of the player, but there was some slight offset. I discovered this when I was attempting to test some Ghast Tech that I made in 1.16 in earlier versions and found out that 1.16 was the oldest version in which it actually worked. However, I managed to come up with a solution to make it viable in older versions as well. Since any attack that intersects the deflecting zone will send the fireball in the direction of the attack, and the initial position of the fireball is consistent, by rebinding the attack button to a letter key and holding it down while facing an entity or using an auto clicker, you can attack every game tick and guarantee that you set the direction of the fireball the moment it fires and precisely control it. And here I have a setup to demonstrate it. The last movement quirk that we need to understand is the difference between a fireball's motion and its power. Motion is the direction the fireball is going. Power is the direction the fireball wants to go. Here we have a command block set with a negative Y coordinate portion for its power, but a positive Y coordinate portion for its motion. Watch as the fireball begins traveling upwards, but then heads back downwards. The fireball accelerates or decelerates in the direction of its power until its motion and power are aligned. This is why pushing slime blocks to deflect fireballs has odd quirks in Java Edition, as the motion changes, but the power only changes if the fireball is hit by a projectile or an attack intersects the deflecting zone. Upon discovering the viability of Ghast Tech, I wanted to show the world how revolutionary the idea was, and so I decided that the way I'd introduce everyone to Ghast Tech was with the most advanced explosion-powered tech in Minecraft. I was going to make a fireball-powered quarry. Or at least I was until I realized I couldn't even make a regular quarry. So I figured I'd at least make a proof of concept using a tunnel board design from YouTube. Original video linked in the description. I threw together a basic blast chamber, only pushing in 18 blocks for simplicity. I used a slime block with a lever on it being blown up to start the clock. I chained a redstone clock off of it in order to normalize the inputs so that they arrive in line with the 3-second cycle of the Ghast. And then I had all the flying machines synced up to that cycle and sent them off. After 3 hours, I got a full double chest full of resources, which I then manually sorted. Of course, 3 hours to go 100 blocks deep is not particularly practical, but this shows that the technology is feasible for use in designs by people more competent than me, and that was enough for me. Of course, I didn't think simply showing a proof of concept for something that could be done was enough to sell it, so I also decided to make something more practical. This is a 28,800 cobblestone per hour cobblestone generator. I'm not the first one to make one. Necrosapiens actually made one before for 1.13 and 14, and even could work with 2 Ghasts for double the rate. But that design utilizes a complex block stream manipulation setup to bring the cobblestone from the generator to the blast chamber. While this design is so simple that I threw in some bonus features for fun, including an update suppressed weighted pressure plate in order to detect the fireballs, created using this variation on Myren Eario's 1.13 update suppression method, utilizing the lack of updates when a sticky piston attempts to pull a non-movable slime block structure. And by using a headless sticky piston, you can retract the head of a separate piston, allowing you to update suppress blocks that would normally require a solid surface to be placed on, like a weighted pressure plate. Credit to Jonas Storm Paladin, who, as far as I'm aware, is the original creator of this variation on the update suppression trick discovered by Myren Eario. I used it also to create a floating rail with a witch and a minecart in it in order to use as the collision point for the fireballs instead of a block, so that way the items will fall through it into the water stream below for hopper efficient item collection. As a result of these changes, the design is incredibly simple and user-friendly. Simply enter the minecart and flick the lever to begin producing cobblestone immediately. Using minimal moving parts, and by simply having the Ghast in a minecart on top of a bottom trapdoor, the fireball position is slightly elevated relative to the center of the player so that it travels straight downwards, and by spawning inside of the player and the minecart does not collide with either of them, and instead travels to the witch down below in order to make the blast chamber function. Turning off and exiting the machine is just as simple as turning it on. Simply flick the lever back off and exit the minecart, and the device is fully reset to be used again at any time. So that's the cobblestone generator. Now, if we don't want to be limited to just 28,800 items per hour, we're going to need to use multiple Ghasts. Minecrafter Scorpio, in cooperation with JJL21, who discovered the stationary Ghast fireball trick, has actually created a 12 Ghast setup to produce over 300,000 cobblestone per hour. Now, I don't know what tricks they used in order to manage 12 Ghasts at once, but I've come up with my own solution. This is a device which synchronizes 4 Ghast fireball cycles so that they're offset by 15 game ticks, and deflects the fireballs to a central location. By blocking and unblocking line of sight to the Ghasts periodically, we can synchronize their cycles before they shoot a single fireball, and then activate the device. As you can now hear, the Ghast fireball cycles are synced up. Now by flipping this lever, they will no longer have their heads be blocked. So with a setup like this, we can harness the power of 4 Ghasts, each independently shooting fireballs. Of course, this isn't the most practical setup, as I created this setup before discovering most of the other properties, but this is just a proof of concept. I encourage everyone to take a look at Scorpio's video in order to see what 12 Ghasts being used to their full potential really looks like. Now, cobblestone generators and proof of concept tech demos for things that could be done in the future are all well and good, but how practical is it to actually make something advanced with Ghast-powered technology? Very. Introducing the first Ghast-powered fully automatic Bedrock breaker. Thanks to the small, manageable blast radius of the fireball and the compact design that this allows for, it takes little more than a single hotbar worth of items in order to build this Bedrock breaker. This is, of course, in addition to the many stacks of pistons required to operate a automatic Bedrock breaker over a long distance, simulated here by this command block that continues the chain as the device continues forward. For this device to function, the minecart needs to be positioned at a precise location by aligning it against 2 chests on top of a bottom trapdoor and being pushed by an open trapdoor before removing the support blocks. Once the minecart for the player position has been set up, you can then make your way over to the Ghast, Put it in a minecart in order to drop it into the machine, as long as it doesn't die. Make your way over to the player minecart without the ghast shooting a hole in the machine. And if you are in survival mode, once you enter the minecart and the ghast fires its first fireball, the automatic bedrock breaker will then start up. As you can see, this device breaks 1 bedrock per fireball every 3 seconds. It's incredibly compact and 100% reliable. But the most shocking thing about all of this is that I built this through trial and error. Before making any of the things shown earlier in this video, before taking a deep dive into the fireball mechanics and honing it down to an exact science, before I did any of that, I came up with a simple setup where a fireball shot by a ghast would blow up a few piston heads, and I turned that into an automatic bedrock breaker. As a result, I'm confident that there's much in store for the future of Ghast Tech in the technical Minecraft community, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the amazing builds that come out of this. In conclusion, I'd like to thank everyone in the technical Minecraft community whose discoveries and inventions inspired me to discover stuff on my own, and special thanks in particular to Razeworks for welcoming me and others into the community through his snapshot testing streams, allowing new people to the community to get involved and learn all the new features as they come out. But ultimately, all glory goes to God for this. I was in a bad spot in my life before, but after accepting Jesus and removing the negative influences in my life, I got back into Minecraft as a way to replace those influences with a fun, peaceful outlet for my creativity. So I thank God for this community and all the good that's come out of it. God bless you all. See you next time.